The Rose Hill Hotel stood tall on the corner of a quiet street, wrapped in ivy and soft golden lights. Its windows sparkled in the morning sun, and the scent of fresh flowers drifted from its wide front doors. Inside, everything felt calm, like time moved a little slower there. The marble floors were always clean, the air smelled like lavender, and soft music played in the background. It was the kind of place that made guests feel special, even if they only stayed one night. Elijah worked at Rose Hill as a bellboy. He wasn't loud or flashy. He didn't complain, even when the days were long and his feet ached. He wore his uniform neatly, kept his shoes shining, and always smiled when he greeted guests. People often overlooked him, but those who paid attention saw someone who truly cared. He carried heavy bags without a word and opened doors with a polite nod. His kindness was quiet, but it filled the hotel in small, important ways. That morning, a sleek black car pulled up to the entrance. It wasn't like the usual cars that stopped by. This one was long and shiny, like something out of a movie. The driver quickly stepped out and opened the door. Out came Mr. Whitmore. He wore a navy blue suit that looked more expensive than Elijah's whole paycheck. His shoes were polished until they gleamed, and his watch sparkled in the sunlight. He didn't look around to admire the hotel. He barely glanced at the flowers or the doorman's welcome. He just walked straight in, like he owned the place. Elijah stepped forward with a friendly smile. "Good morning, sir. May I help you with your bags?" Mr. Whitmore paused and gave Elijah a slow look, as if he were deciding whether the bellboy was even worth speaking to. Then he chuckled. "Oh, so you're the help," he said, dropping his suitcase with a loud thump. "Be careful. That bag costs more than your whole life." Elijah's smile faded for a second, but he picked up the suitcase gently. "Of course, sir, right this way." Mr. Whitmore laughed again, louder this time. "Look at you so serious." "Relax, kid, you're just a bellboy." Other staff members looked over nervously. The front desk clerk quickly turned away, pretending to sort papers. A cleaner nearby tightened her grip on her mop and stared at the floor. No one said anything, they all knew how these things went. Rich guests got what they wanted, and workers had to keep their heads down. Jobs weren't easy to find. Elijah didn't speak. He led Mr. Whitmore to the elevator and pressed the button. The ride up was silent, except for the soft ding of each passing floor. When they reached the top level, Elijah opened the door to one of the finest suites in the hotel. Mr. Whitmore walked in without a thank you. He tossed his coat onto a chair and looked around. Not bad," he said, almost surprised. Then he turned back to Elijah. "You can go now. Just don't scratch the floors with those cheap shoes of yours." Elijah nodded and left quietly, closing the door behind him. In the hallway, his shoulders slumped for a moment. Then he took a deep breath, stood up straight and headed back down. He had more guests to help. Behind him, the other workers exchanged small, tired looks. Another rich guest. Another day. But none of them knew who was really watching, or what would come next. Most guests at the Rose Hill Hotel didn't notice Amara. She moved quietly through the hallways, dressed in plain slacks and soft sweaters, her curly hair pulled into a neat bun. Many assumed she was just an assistant, or maybe part of the cleaning staff. She didn't correct them. That was exactly what she wanted. Amara was the owner of the Rose Hill Hotel. Years ago, after her parents passed away, the hotel became hers. They had worked there most of their lives, her mother as a cleaner, her father as a handyman. They loved the hotel like it was part of the family. Amara had grown up running through its back hallways, folding towels beside her mother, and learning how to fix leaky sinks with her father. She had seen it all, the good, the bad, and especially the way wealthy guests treated workers like they were invisible. Now, as an adult, Amara ran the hotel quietly. She didn't flash her title or expect special treatment. Instead, she chose to stay in the background. That way, she could see who treated people with respect, without knowing who she was. She had seen Elijah many times. He reminded her so much of her father, gentle, patient, and hard-working. He never spoke badly about guests, even the rude ones. He did his job with pride, and Amara noticed everything. The way he knelt to tie a little boy's shoe when the parents weren't looking. The way he helped a lost couple find their way without rolling his eyes, and how he always smiled, even when his eyes looked tired. But this new guest, Mr. Whitmore, caught Amara's attention for a different reason. She had watched from the corner of the lobby that morning. She saw the way Mr. Whitmore looked down on Elijah, like he was a bug beneath his shiny shoes. She heard the laughter. Just a bellboy, he had said. Something inside Amara tightened. It wasn't just anger, it was something deeper, older, a memory from when she was a little girl hiding behind the front desk, while a guest shouted at her mother for folding towels the wrong way. Her mother had cried in the laundry room that day. No one had stood up for her. Amara had promised herself, even as a child, that one day she would. That evening, Amara sat alone in the office behind the lobby, watching the security footage of the day. There it was again, Mr. Whitmore's smirk, Elijah's silent patience, and the quiet pain in the eyes of the staff. She rested her hands on the desk, fingers pressing into the wood. Not this time, she thought. This time, things would be different. She didn't need to yell. She didn't need to humiliate anyone. She just needed to wait. People always showed who they were, and Amara was watching. The next few days passed slowly, filled with Mr. Whitmore's loud voice and endless demands. He wanted his breakfast exactly at 7 a.m. His towels folded the five-star way, and fresh flowers in his room daily, but only white ones. If anything was even slightly off, he would complain loudly, snapping his fingers or waving his hand like he was swatting away a fly. Still, Elijah kept doing his job. He arrived early, helped guests with their bags, and smiled at every person who passed him. Even when Mr. Whitmore muttered rude things under his breath, Elijah stayed calm. Amara noticed, one morning she saw Elijah kneeling beside an elderly guest whose suitcase had lost a wheel. The woman looked tired, her hands shaking slightly as she tried to drag it across the floor. Elijah walked over quietly, knelt down, and said gently, "Let me help you with that, ma'am." He tied a scarf around the broken wheel to keep it from scraping, then offered to carry the bag upstairs for her. The woman touched his arm and said, "Thank you, young man. You're very kind." Elijah simply smiled and nodded. "It's no trouble at all." Later that afternoon, Elijah stood behind the hotel, talking to another bellboy, Jamal. The two leaned against the wall, sipping from paper cups of coffee. They spoke in hushed voices, not realizing Amara was nearby, tending to a flower box just around the corner. "I'm almost there," Elijah said. "Another few months, and I'll have enough saved for night classes. I want to study hotel management." Jamal looked impressed. "You're really going for it, huh?" Elijah chuckled softly. "Yeah, my mom always told me, if you want more you have to work for it. I want to run a place like this someday. Make people feel safe, respected." Just then, the back door creaked open. It was Mr. Whitmore. He looked around with a wrinkled nose, then scoffed. "School, for what? To carry bags faster." Elijah stood up straight, his smile slipping just slightly. Mr. Whitmore laughed and waved a hand. "Relax, kid, dream smaller. You'll save yourself the disappointment." Then he turned and walked away, chuckling to himself. Elijah said nothing. He just picked up the empty coffee cups and threw them away. Amara, still hidden behind the flowers, felt her chest tighten. Her heart ached, not just for Elijah, but for every kind soul who had ever been told they weren't enough. She blinked hard, trying to keep the sting out of her eyes. There was a time, not long ago, when someone had said the same thing to her. She looked down at her hands, strong, steady hands that now held the keys to the very hotel someone once said she could never own. No, she thought. Elijah's dreams would not be laughed away. Not if she could help it. And now she knew it was time. Mr. Whitmore's complaints grew louder each day. He yelled if the coffee wasn't hot enough. He snapped at the front desk over the room's temperature. He even shouted at a server for not smiling the right way. No one could do anything to please him, but no one could afford to upset him either. His money, his name and his reviews still mattered in the hotel world. One morning, the hotel lobby buzzed with quiet energy. It was just past breakfast time, and Elijah was pushing a luggage cart near the cafe. He moved carefully, not wanting to bump into anyone. As he passed Mr. Whitmore, who was seated at a table with a silver coffee pot and breakfast laid out before him. Disaster struck. Mr. Whitmore reached for his coffee, but didn't check his sleeve. His elbow bumped the pot, and hot coffee spilled across the white tablecloth, dripping onto his pants. He stood up fast and shouted, "You idiot!" Elijah froze. "Sir," he asked, confused. "You pushed the cart too close. You made me spill it." Mr. Whitmore's voice boomed across the lobby. Elijah looked at the space between the cart and the table. It wasn't even close. He hadn't touched anything. A hush fell over the room. Guests looked up from their meals. The front desk clerk stopped typing. Amara, standing near the back hallway, turned slowly. I'm sorry, sir," Elijah said quietly, his face pale. Mr. Whitmore threw his napkin on the floor. "I want to speak to the manager right now. This boy is careless. I could have been burned." Within minutes, the manager arrived, eyes wide and nervous. "Mr. Whitmore, I'm very sorry," he said quickly. "This bellboy needs to be written up," Mr. Whitmore demanded. "I don't care how small the mistake was. If you let this kind of work slide, your whole hotel will fall apart." The manager nodded and pulled out a form, scribbling Elijah's name on it without argument. Elijah stood still, hands behind his back, his eyes focused on the floor. Amara stepped forward, her heart pounding. But she didn't speak, not yet. She waited as Elijah accepted the paper, nodded once, and quietly returned to his duties. He didn't argue. He didn't cry, but Amara saw the pain in his eyes. That night, after most of the guests were asleep, Amara sat in her office, the lights low. The write-up form lay on her desk. She had asked the manager for it the moment he returned from the lobby. Her hands curled into fists. This was the final straw. She opened her laptop and typed a short message to the guest services team. Subject: brunch invitation. Mr. Whitmore body. Kindly invite Mr. Whitmore to a private brunch with the hotel owner tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in the VIP lounge. Please confirm his attendance. She signed the email with the name no one expected. Amara D. Rivers, owner the Rose Hill Hotel. She leaned back in her chair and looked out the office window, where the city lights blinked in the distance. This wasn't just about Elijah. This was about everyone who had ever been made to feel small because of where they worked, how they dressed, or how much money they had. Amara wouldn't shout. She wouldn't cause a scene. But the time for silence had ended. Tomorrow the real owner of the Rose Hill would finally step forward. And Mr. Whitmore would see just how wrong he had been. The next morning, sunlight poured into the Rose Hill Hotel's VIP lounge. The table was set beautifully with polished silverware, white linen napkins, and fresh orchids in a vase at the center. A soft glow came from the tall windows, and the room smelled faintly of vanilla and clean air. Mr. Whitmore arrived right on time, wearing another expensive suit and his usual smug smile. He looked around the room, expecting to see an older man in a fine watch or maybe a tall businessman in a power tie. Instead, he saw Amara. She sat calmly at the head of the table, wearing a simple navy blue blazer and a quiet, steady look in her eyes. Mr. Whitmore raised an eyebrow. "Are you the assistant?" he asked, pulling out a chair without waiting for her answer. Amara smiled gently. "No, I'm Amara Rivers, owner of the Rose Hill Hotel." He froze, hand on the back of the chair. "What?" he said, his voice a little too loud. "You're the owner?" "Yes," she nodded once. "For the past 8 years. Mr. Whitmore laughed, but there was no joy in it. You're joking." "I'm not," she replied calmly. "I grew up here. My parents worked in this hotel, just like Elijah and many others you've met this week." He sat down slowly, suddenly unsure of himself. Amara leaned forward slightly. "I invited you here to talk, not to argue. I've watched how you've treated my staff. You may not remember every word you've said, but I do." Mr. Whitmore opened his mouth, but she kept going. "You laughed at a young man's dream. You blamed him for something you did yourself. And worse, you made him feel small, just because you could." He looked uncomfortable now, his fingers tapping the table. Amara's voice stayed calm but firm. "You see, Mr. Whitmore, our hotel doesn't just serve food and make beds. We protect dignity. We treat people with respect, whether they wear a suit or a name tag. She reached into her folder and placed the write-up form on the table. This, she said, should never have happened. He cleared his throat. I didn't know he mattered so much to you. He matters because he's human. Amara said simply. That should be enough. Silence filled the room. Mr. Whitmore finally spoke. I didn't mean to. Amara stood up slowly, cutting him off. We all show who we are when we think no one important is watching. You've shown me enough. She turned toward the door. Your room will be packed and ready within the hour. I kindly ask that you check out this morning. His mouth dropped open. You're kicking me out. Yes, she said without a flicker of hesitation. This hotel doesn't need your money. But we do need kindness. With that, Amara left the room, her footsteps soft on the polished floor. She didn't slam the door. She didn't need to. The message was already clear. By noon Mr. Whitmore had checked out of the Rose Hill Hotel. He didn't slam any doors. He didn't say goodbye. He simply left, with his head down and his suit wrinkled from a morning that didn't go as he had expected. The staff whispered about it for a while. Some smiled quietly. Others felt shocked. Guests like him never got kicked out, not in places like Rose Hill. But Amara didn't talk about it again. She had made her point. Now it was time to move forward. That evening, Elijah stood by the lobby doors, straightening his uniform. He still didn't know exactly what had happened. No one told him why Mr. Whitmore left early. He only knew that, somehow, things felt different. Then Amara approached him. Elijah, she said gently. Do you have a few minutes? He nodded quickly. Of course. She led him to the garden behind the hotel. The sun was low, casting a golden glow over the flowers. Amara stopped near a bench and looked at him. I saw everything, she said. The way you handled that guest. The way you never raised your voice, even when it would have been fair. Elijah looked down. It's part of the job, ma'am. No, she said softly. It's part of who you are. She handed him an envelope. Inside was a scholarship form, with his name already filled in. I'd like to sponsor your night classes. Amara said, and when you're ready, there's a place for you here, not just as a bellboy, but as a future leader. Elijah stared at the paper, eyes wide, throat tight. I thank you. I don't know what to say. Amara smiled. Just say you'll keep going. That's all I ask. And as the sky turned soft and pink above them, Elijah finally believed something he had only dared to dream. His story was just beginning. If this story moved you, take a moment to like and share it with others who believe in kindness and respect for all. Leave a comment below. What would you have done in Amara's place? And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us of the strength and quiet courage.